Everyone at the auto parts counter is trying to sell you the most expensive bottle on the shelf, but here's what most drivers never learn. Several of the cheapest motor oil brands in America are made by the exact same manufacturers as the premium stuff. I've spent years pulling drain plugs and reading used oil analysis, and the bargain bottles people mock online are quietly protecting engines just as well. Today I'm breaking down 7 cheap motor oil brands only smart, informed buyers reach for. Number 1 might be sitting on a shelf you drive past every week. Let's get into it. Before I get into specific brands, it helps to know what you're actually looking for on the bottle, because this is the entire reason some of these budget oils hold up and others don't. Every motor oil sold for a gasoline engine in the US is supposed to carry an API certification, currently APISP, along with an ILS ACGF6 rating. If it's meant to protect modern turbocharged, direct injection engines against low-speed pre-ignition. That little starburst or donut symbol on the bottle isn't marketing. It represents a standardized battery of wear, sludge, oxidation, and volatility tests set by the American Petroleum Institute. And every brand on this list, cheap or expensive, has to pass the exact same tests to legally display it. Once an oil clears that bar, the differences between a $10 jug and a $40 jug come down to base oil quality, additive treat rate, and marketing budget, not some hidden inferior formula. Keep that certification symbol in mind as we go through this list, because it's the thing separating a genuinely cheap deal from an oil that's cheap for a reason. Number 7. Chevron's Havoline conventional line. Havoline doesn't get talked about much anymore because Chevron spends its marketing dollars pushing the synthetic Havoline Pro DS line instead. But the conventional Havoline formula sitting quietly on the bottom shelf is still a legitimate option for older engines and vehicles running short trips around town. It carries current APISP certification, which means it passes the same wear protection, sludge control, and low-speed pre-ignition testing that every modern gasoline engine oil has to clear. The reason it stays this cheap is simple. Chevron isn't spending money reformulating this line every year or running television spots for it. It's a stable, proven conventional formula built on Chevron's own base oil refining, and Chevron actually owns and operates its own base oil plants rather than buying stock from a third-party blender. That vertical integration keeps costs down without cutting corners on the additive package. Where Havoline conventional makes the most sense is in an older vehicle, something built before direct injection and turbocharging became standard, especially one that has already got some miles on it and is not sensitive to the tighter tolerances that synthetic oils are formulated around. If you are running a paid-off commuter car with a naturally aspirated engine and you are changing the oil on a normal 3,000 to 5,000 mile schedule, conventional Havoline does the job it is certified to do. Where it stops making sense is in anything turbocharged, anything under a manufacturer warranty that specifies a synthetic fill, or anything doing a lot of towing or stop-and-go traffic where oil temperatures climb. In those situations, the extra few dollars for a synthetic blend buys real thermal stability you would otherwise be giving up. I have pulled Havoline conventional out of plenty of high-mileage commuter cars over the years, and the drain samples generally come back looking exactly like what you would expect from a properly maintained conventional oil. No unusual sludging, no discoloration that points to overheating, nothing that suggests the additive package is falling short of what the APISP rating promises. It is not a flashy oil, and Chevron is not trying to make it one. It is a stable, boring formula that does the one job it is certified to do, which is exactly what you want in an older, simpler engine. Number 6. Pennzoil's conventional and synthetic blend lines. Pennzoil built its entire premium reputation on Pure Plus technology, a gas-to-liquid process that converts natural gas into a synthetic base oil instead of refining it from crude. That's genuinely a strong process, and it's why Pennzoil Platinum and Ultra Platinum get recommended so often. But Pennzoil also sells a conventional line and a synthetic blend line that get overshadowed by the marketing around the full synthetic products, and both of them still carry current APISP and ILSA-CGF6 certification. The synthetic blend in particular is worth a second look because it mixes a portion of that same Pure Plus synthetic base stock into a conventional formula, which gives you better cold flow and oxidation resistance than a pure conventional oil, at a price that's usually only a few dollars more per jug. The additive chemistry fighting wear, controlling sludge, and neutralizing acids in the oil is largely the same detergent and anti-wear package used across Pennzoil's whole lineup. What changes between the tiers is mostly the base oil and the drain interval Pennzoil is willing to warranty. For a daily driver with moderate mileage that isn't chasing an extended 10,000 or 15,000 mile interval, the conventional or synthetic blend Pennzoil gives you a real Pennzoil formula without paying for the extended interval guarantee you were never going to use anyway. Check your cap for the correct viscosity. Confirm the bottle shows the current API donut, and you're getting a legitimate Pennzoil product engineered by the same company that builds the platinum tier oil, just without the premium sticker price attached to it. A lot of owners assume the conventional and synthetic blend tiers are leftover, outdated recipes Pennzoil keeps around out of obligation, but that is not how a modern oil company operates. Every tier in a major brand's lineup gets updated when the API specification changes, because failing to keep even the entry-level product current would open the company up to warranty claims and lab scrutiny. So when you see a fresh APISP symbol on a bargain bin Pennzoil bottle, that is not an old formula wearing a new label. It is a current formula, just without the natural gas base stock upgrade you are paying extra for in the platinum tier. If you're finding this useful so far, go ahead and hit that like button and make sure you're subscribed, because the next 4 brands are the ones that actually surprise most people once they learn who really manufactures them. Number 5. Mobil Super. When Mobil retired its old conventional oil line, it replaced it with Mobil Super, and the formula got noticeably better in the process. Mobil Super now carries roughly 15% more cleaning additive than the conventional oil it replaced, and it's rated to meet current APISP, SN, SM, SL, and SN Plus standards, depending on the specific product you grab. That SN Plus rating matters more than people realize, because it means the oil has been tested specifically for low-speed pre-ignition protection, a knock-related issue that shows up in modern turbocharged, direct injection engines. Mobil Super is built by ExxonMobil using the company's own refining infrastructure, the same infrastructure that produces the base stock inside Mobil 1. The difference between Mobil Super and Mobil 1 is not a difference in who makes it. It is a difference in how much of that refined synthetic base stock gets used and how aggressive the additive treat rate is. Mobil Super comes in conventional and synthetic blend versions, and the synthetic blend is rated to protect engines through a full 5,000-mile interval, which lines up with how most owners actually drive rather than the extended intervals synthetic oil marketing tends to lean on. If your vehicle does not require a specific full synthetic approval from the manufacturer and you are not chasing a 10,000-mile interval, Mobil Super gives you genuine ExxonMobil engineering in a bottle that typically costs less than half of what Mobil 1 runs. I bring this one up specifically because so many customers walk into a parts store assuming Mobil only sells one tier of oil worth buying, and they end up paying for a full synthetic extended performance formula when their vehicle, driving pattern, and change interval never called for it in the first place. Mobil Super exists precisely for that driver. It carries the same corporate quality control ExxonMobil applies to Mobil 1, just built around a shorter, more realistic service interval instead of an extended one. Number 4. Valvoline's Daily Protection Line. This is Valvoline's conventional offering, sitting underneath the advanced full synthetic and the high mileage formulas that get most of the shelf talkers and end cap displays at auto parts stores. Daily Protection still meets current API-SN Plus standards, which again means it has been tested for low-speed pre-ignition resistance, not just basic wear protection. What makes this one worth knowing about is that independent testing comparing wear metrics across major brands has repeatedly shown Valvoline's additive chemistry performing competitively against full synthetic oils from other manufacturers, even in the conventional tier. Valvoline has decades of refining experience and formulates its own additive packages rather than buying a generic off-the-shelf blend, and that shows up in how the Daily Protection line performs relative to its price point. It's sold in small 32-ounce bottles rather than the 5-quart jugs some competitors use, which throws people off when they're comparing shelf prices. But per quart it remains one of the more affordable options, carrying a real branded formulation instead of a private label recipe. For a paid-off vehicle on a standard change interval, especially one that isn't turbocharged or under a synthetic-only warranty requirement, Daily Protection is Valvoline's actual engineering, not a watered-down version of it. Valvoline is also one of the few brands on this list that still blends and packages a large share of its own product domestically, rather than outsourcing the formulation to a third party. And that kind of vertical control tends to show up as consistency, jug to jug and batch to batch, in a way that's harder to guarantee when a brand is simply licensing its name to whoever submits the lowest bid. Number 3. Amazon Basics Motor Oil. This one throws people off because it sounds like exactly the kind of generic private label product you'd want to avoid. But Amazon Basics Full Synthetic Oil is manufactured using ExxonMobil base stocks and carries current API-SP certification. Amazon doesn't operate its own oil refineries or blending plants. It contracts the formulation and production out to established manufacturers. And for the automotive line, that means the base oil going into the bottle traces back to the same refining process used in name-brand ExxonMobil products. The additive package is a licensed formulation built to hit API-SP and ILSACGF6A specifications, the same benchmarks every major synthetic oil on the shelf has to clear. What you're paying for with a premium brand in this exact same certification tier is largely the marketing, the packaging design, and the shelf space at the auto parts store, not a meaningfully different oil molecule. Amazon Basics tends to run 30 to 40% cheaper than comparable name-brand full synthetics carrying the identical API-SP rating. The trade-off is that Amazon Basics has a narrower product range. You're not going to find specialty European formulations or high-mileage seal conditioner blends under this label the way you would from Mobil 1 or Castrol. But for a standard gasoline engine that just needs a full synthetic oil, meeting the common SP and GF6, a specification printed on your oil cap, it's a legitimate way to buy real synthetic protection without the brand premium. The other thing worth knowing is that Amazon's private label automotive products go through the same supplier vetting and quality auditing process Amazon applies to any product it puts its own name on, which is a different situation entirely from a random unbranded oil showing up in a marketplace listing from a third-party seller you've never heard of. Buying the actual Amazon Basics branded product, sold and shipped by Amazon directly, is what gets you that ExxonMobil linked base stock and the APISP paperwork behind it. Now, before I get to the top two, I want to be straight with you about the other side of this, because cheap and smart are not the same thing. Not every low-priced bottle on that shelf deserves a spot on this list. Unbranded oil sold in bulk containers with no visible API donut, oils marketed only through third-party online marketplace listings with no traceable manufacturer, and jugs where the viscosity or certification claims on the label don't match what's registered with the API's own licensing database are all real problems that show up more often than people expect, especially with online marketplace sellers repackaging out-of-spec surplus oil. If a bottle doesn't clearly show a current API certification and the correct viscosity for your engine, the few dollars you save aren't worth the risk to a set of bearings. Every brand I'm covering on this list clears that bar. That's the difference between a smart budget pick and just buying the cheapest thing in the aisle. Here's something else worth understanding about why so many of these budget brands hold up in lab testing. A handful of large independent manufacturers, companies most drivers have never heard of, produce private label motor oil for dozens of retailers simultaneously, all built to the same API and ILSAC specifications the big brands have to meet. That is exactly what's going on with the next two brands on this list, and it is why they consistently outperform their price tag in independent used oil analysis. Number 2. Walmart's SuperTech line. SuperTech is manufactured by Warren Distribution, a company headquartered in Omaha, Nebraska, that operates as one of the largest independent oil blenders in the United States. Warren is not some backroom operation cutting corners. It runs under strict API licensing and OEM approval oversight, and it produces private label oil for multiple major retailers, not just Walmart. SuperTech's full synthetic line carries current APISP certification and meets ILSAC GF6A standards, and it is sold across the complete viscosity range most vehicles need, from 5W20 up through 10W30, in conventional, synthetic blend, and full synthetic formulations. Because SuperTech is a product specification contracted out to Warren rather than a Walmart-built formula, the actual chemistry inside the bottle is engineered by people who do nothing but formulate motor oil for a living. Blackstone Laboratories and other independent oil analysis labs that test used oil samples have repeatedly found SuperTech's wear metal levels, iron, copper, and aluminum readings, landing right in line with major name brands after comparable mileage intervals. A 5-quart jug of full synthetic SuperTech typically runs under $20, which is often less than half what a comparable name brand full synthetic costs for the identical API certification. For a daily driver on a normal service schedule, this is one of the clearest examples on this list of paying for a brand name rather than a meaningfully different product. I get asked constantly whether a Warren-made oil is somehow inferior because it doesn't carry an oil company's own name on the front, and the honest answer is no. Warren operates its blending plants under the same API licensing program every major refiner has to follow, which means an inspector can walk in and audit their process the same way they'd audit ExxonMobil's or Shell's. The brand on the front of the jug tells you who's marketing it. The API donut on the back tells you what it's actually capable of doing inside your engine. And number 1, Costco's Kirkland Signature Full Synthetic Motor Oil. Kirkland is also manufactured by Warren Distribution, the same company behind SuperTech, which means the two oils share a manufacturing lineage, even though they are sold under completely different retail names. Kirkland's full synthetic formulas carry APISP certification, ILS ACGF6A certification, and Dexos 1 Gen 3 approval, which is General Motors' own specification for gasoline engines. That Dexos 1 approval matters because it means the oil has passed General Motors' specific testing protocol on top of the general industry standards, something plenty of budget oils never bother pursuing. Independent testing from the Petroleum Quality Institute of America has evaluated Kirkland's full synthetic oil and found it held its viscosity grade under sustained heat, performed well on cold start flow testing, and returned clean wear metal readings on used oil analysis after a full service interval, essentially matching results seen from Mobil 1 and SuperTech in the same testing round. A 2-pack of 5-quart jugs typically runs somewhere in the $30 to $40 range at Costco, which works out to noticeably less per quart than nearly every name brand full synthetic carrying the same APISP and Dexos 1 credentials. The reason this sits at number 1 on this list is not just the price. It is that Kirkland is currently checking every major certification box, APISP, GF6A, and a manufacturer-specific Dexos 1 approval, at a price point that undercuts almost everything else on the shelf carrying that same combination of approvals. If your vehicle's cap calls for a common full synthetic viscosity like 0W20 or 5W30, and does not require a specialty European or diesel-specific formulation, Kirkland is about as close as you are going to get to premium tier certification without paying the premium tier price. The Dexos 1 Gen 3 approval is really what separates it from the rest of the field here, because General Motors does not hand that approval out for free or as a courtesy to a big box retailer. Warren had to submit Kirkland's formula to General Motors for actual qualification testing, covering things like oxidation resistance, oil consumption, and timing chain wear, and then pass on the merits before General Motors would let Costco print that approval on the label. That's real engine builder validation sitting on a bottle that costs less than most private label conventional oils, let alone a full synthetic. A few things are worth remembering before you go grab any of these off a shelf. The API certification symbol and the specific letter designation, right now that is SP for gasoline engines, is the single most important thing on the bottle. It tells you the oil has passed a standardized battery of wear, sludge, oxidation, and pre-ignition tests set by the American Petroleum Institute, regardless of what the brand name says above it. After that, check for any manufacturer-specific approval your vehicle actually requires. Things like Dexos 1 for GM, Ford's WSS specifications, or European approvals for VW and BMW platforms, because a cheap oil that's missing a required approval is not actually cheaper if it puts your warranty coverage at risk. And match the viscosity grade exactly to what your owner's manual specifies. The certification tells you the oil meets a quality floor. The viscosity grade tells you it is the right oil for your specific engine's tolerances. Get both of those right, and the brand name on the jug becomes far less important than most people have been led to believe. One more habit worth building: do not just check certification once and assume it is locked in forever. PI specifications get updated every several years, most recently with the move to SP and GF6, and manufacturers occasionally reformulate a budget line to keep pace while a competing brand lags behind. Glancing at the API donut every time you buy, even on a brand you've trusted for years, takes about 5 seconds, and make sure you are never accidentally buying an outdated formula that has stayed on a shelf longer than it should have. If any of these brands surprised you, drop a comment letting me know which one you're switching to on your next oil change. And if you found this breakdown useful, go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.